My name is Cathy Gorton. I am a board member for the NEWCC, and I am here today to tell you about my horological experiences. I get to talk about myself. I did notes so that I wouldn't forget any details of my life that relate to horology, and we will give it a go here. First of all, I want to say thank you for inviting me to do the talk. Here at the Rocky Mountain Regional, it's really nice to be here. So a special thanks to all the chapters, chapter 21 for hosting this event, chapters 160 and 100, and a special to Mike Horn and Dave Fornoff too. You guys did a good job putting this event together. So thank you. I also want to introduce my husband, which if you were here 2 minutes ago, I would have been doing that. Cathy Gorton right here. His interest is primarily perpetual calendar clocks. He's the main reason I'm here because he caught the bug well before I did. He may chime in a few times in the presentation for additional clarity. He seems to remember things much better than I do. And he is also giving a presentation tomorrow morning on the history of the Seth Thomas office calendar clock. So Greg and I moved from Greensboro, North Carolina, to Bristol, Colorado 2 years ago. We go back east to visit our family quite a bit, so we've been here not quite full time. We're still working on that. And with all our transitioning and everything else that we do, we've got a little ways to go, but we will get there and taking it here full time. So, I'd like to start. This is a picture where Greg and I are standing in front of Westdean College in England. I'm going to share with you my horological journey with bits about collecting, learning, our Gorton clock business, and lastly, some volunteering that I do. This picture was taken in 2016, 2017. We went to, it's in front of Westdean, the conservation school that we went to, and I will talk a little bit more about that too. So, let's see if I can figure out where to go. So my horological story starts when we were first married. There was a furniture delivery truck going through our neighborhood, and we bought a Ridgeway grandmother clock. Small grandfather clock and small grandfather clock. It traveled with us for 17 years and 5 moves. And on the last move, it was damaged in transit. We ended up meeting Rick Dunnick. I don't know if any of you guys know Rick Dunnick. He's from Julian, North Carolina. And he repaired our clock. He's been a long time NAWCC member also. And he introduced my husband to the world of clocks. I've lost track of how many clocks we've had come to our home, perhaps 100. When we moved to Colorado 2 years to 2022, many of them went to Dan Moran's auction and some to the American Clock and Watch Museum of Bristol, Connecticut, and our favorites made it here with us in Colorado. So pictured here are 3 of my favorite clocks. The Ansonia Triumph, far left over there, is for my mom's side of the family, my grandmother, and the Seth Thomas cottage clock on the far this side, far right. That one was made by my great grandfather Griffiths, and he also did the reverse painting. And it was he used to make them as wedding gifts for family members way back when. So that one I have, and then the one in the middle is a 3.5 parlor clock, and that's one of my favorite ones. I just think it's nice. The proportions are gorgeous. The colors, the contrast. Yeah. So all 3 of these cases, all 3 of these clocks, I clean the cases and wax them, and I probably did that for most of the clocks that have come into our house. That's what I like to do is the piece work. So another one of my favorite clocks, this is a 19th century tall case with a Daniel Dale calendar movement in the trunk. Greg purchased this from an auction house in Georgia. It was supposed to come from a South Carolina sea captain, and when we got it, it was completely black from the accumulation of dirt and grime and dust and pollutants. I spent well over 40 hours rubbing this down with black wax and steel wool, and that included all the details, which I think, I don't know how well you guys can see it, but it has the barley twist columns and a few others, so made it look pretty, and we still have this one. This one made it to Colorado with us. The St. Thomas office calendar number 11, the walnut up there. This particular clock is another one of the favorites that Greg acquired. It's originally from a bank in Pendleton, Oregon. It was listed in the St. Thomas catalogs and choices of walnut, old oak, mahogany, and cherry. The picture on the right is from a presentation Greg did for Chapter 17 in North Carolina, showing the different top pieces in the various woods. We actually had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. He probably had a lot of fun doing research. We traveled around, got to meet other people that owned the same clock, and we shared bits and pieces with it. So while collecting clocks, that's a go down. So while collecting clocks, Greg also pursued learning how to repair clocks. He apprenticed with Rick Dunnick that I mentioned earlier and started a business repairing clocks. And the short version of the story is he wanted to go to school to learn how to repair clocks better. And he looked at the various options, and he decided that the Western College of England was the place to go. Westdean is located about 60 miles southwest of London. We have the very good fortune of both being retired from the military. Greg is retired Navy and I'm retired Air Force. And we had our GI educational benefits. And we were the first ones to get the GI educational benefits accepted and approved to be used at Westdean College. We lived in a small town in Lyndhurst, about 5 miles north of Westdean. And we bought a little Ford Focus to get around. There's a manual. I'm proud to say it's always assumed that men can drive manuals everywhere, and it's a big deal for a woman to do this. Well, my own car was a manual for quite a while, and I'm proud to say that I did learn how to drive a manual on the other side of the road. Yeah, you got everything was backwards, and the weird part was. Came back to the States and I'm driving out of my parents' home property and I'm like, God, what side of the road am I supposed to be on? And it throws you for a loop, but we did it. And we think driving a manual's hard, but try crossing a street on foot over there in a little town with circles, and that was scarier than driving. Going the wrong way. So, Westdean is located on the estate of Edward James. He lived from 1907 to 1984. He was an avid supporter of the arts and is probably known for his support of Salvador Dali, an artist from the early 1900s. The iconic Mae West Lips sofa, that's a tongue twister, the champagne lamps, and the lobster telephone. I couldn't find a good picture of the lobster telephone. Were all part of the Edward James collection. His family had a close connection with royalty in the early 1900s, and King Edward VII was Edward James' godfather. And Edward James had no heirs, and his legacy is the establishment of his foundation and Westdean College to nurture music, traditional crafts, and the fine arts. So, the School of Conservation offers degree programs in several disciplines. With clocks, you actually deal with many different materials: metals, wood, glass, ceramics, paper. So having experts in all these fields working in neighboring workshops was a great resource. Westdean offered programs in clocks, metals, books, paper, and furniture and ceramics. So since this is a horological group, I'll show you some pictures of the clock workshop. It was a well-organized space, and this is a Myford Super 7 in a mill. My husband told me that because I could not tell you that. He got to use that machine. This is a Shaolin 102, fully equipped, and one of two Shaolin 70s. And then the other Shaolin 70, microscope, forge lathe, and other hand lathes. There's also a separate cleaning room, testing room, and a hearth for hot work. The class back when we attended 2016 to 2017 would accept up to 8 students each with a dedicated workbench. They are now accepting up to 16 students in the clock program. The current instructor is a very good friend of ours. Greg actually talks with him more frequently, I don't. But if you know anybody who might be interested in something like going to a place like this, it's a fun place to go. Oh, I did, whoops, what did I prepare? That was a workshop there. And so I told you a little bit about clocks, and we're now back to me. My short story is Greg was accepted into the clock program, and we wanted to go to England together. If you want to go to England for an extended period of time, you need a visa. His program did not have a spouse visa, so in order for me to go, I had 4 choices regarding a visa. I could either start my own business, I could fill a UK desperately needed job that an American could fill. I could have done that. I could volunteer, or I could become a student. And I decided I really wanted to be a student. So I got to go into the furniture workshop, and I studied there for a year. You'll notice each of the students has their own bench and projects to work on. So some of my fellow classmates there. And it was a very hands-on program. So, short lesson in conservation, 3 main principles: minimal intervention, reversibility, and accountability. So document justification, what you did and why. And all the conservation programs were hands-on, with as much bench experience as you wanted. And one of my first projects was a clock. It belonged to a gentleman. It's an 18th century English mahogany bracket clock that had fallen out of his boot. I see some nods. So the trunk of his car is the British boot. And it was sheep. And that goes, there you go. So sorry guys, it jumped off me and I didn't touch the right thing. There you go. So when it fell out of the boot, it was absolutely fascinating that the impact did not break the glass, but it did crack the case and had several areas of damage. My goal was to fix and mend the case. Here's some close-up pictures of the damage. The cracked case, dented veneer, messed up finish, and some of the skills I learned putting this Humpty Dumpty clock back together again. I did some creative gluing and clamping to get this clock back together again. I had to remove the back door off the clock. I didn't realize the damage that this did, as we were not in a climate controlled workshop, and the door remained off for 2 months. And so when I went to put the door back on, I would have thought it would have fit. Nope, I had to fix that one too. So that was learning how to take the glass out, the putty out, cutting a piece of glass, putting it back in, unworking the door. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So here's a close-up of the veneer, repairs in progress, and they call minimum intervention, that not removing any of the old finish. Hence, trying to mend a crack without removing material was definitely a challenge for me, and it would have been much easier just to have taken all the finish off, put on a new coat, but that wasn't acceptable there. My instructor was you can come up and you say, oh, you need to do it again, or I need to do such. And I said, Norbert, I said, what do you see when you look at this thing? I don't see what you see. He says, Cathy, I see pixels. I can see pixels. I said, oh, all right, got it. Okay. So here is the before and after pictures. It did get put back together, and the gentleman was happy to have his clock back. So I did a veneering project on a St. Thomas steeple clock. The finish was quite degraded. Missing pieces, missing wood pieces. You can see the before and after there. And here's a little bit of the close-up pictures. It was interesting. In the conservation school, they advocated working with watercolors because that's reversible. You can take it off. So you do the pigment color matching with watercolors, and then you put the finishes on top of that in some of the areas to get the tone right, completely put the shellac back on. Or the close-ups. I don't know how well that's coming through on the videos, but I think you guys get the ideas. So in the school there, you had a lot of different learning projects. This one was a Greenwood project that I did. So we did working with Greenwood. You can see me chopping the wood and forget what it's called. Spoke shade, yeah, that's it exactly. It was fun. We did turning, I made a dovetail chisel in the forge. I will show you that in a minute. A couple pictures down there at the bottom. I spent a full week learning blacksmithing skills by making a dovetail chisel. It started the shaping with plasticine, which is like a Play-Doh, using a hammer and an anvil. We practiced our next step on mild steel. It was heated up quickly so we could figure out the angles and how to hammer the round steel into a tapered chisel with angled edges and a tapered head. Steps for the 1/2-inch thick steel rod. Have any of you guys done blacksmithing? Would you like to hear all the steps? It will take me about a minute and a half to go through. So the first thing was to anneal the silver steel. You have to heat it to a bright orange, approximately 30 minutes for every 1/2 inch of thickness, and you have to hold it at temperature for 30 or more minutes. You then forge it into shape with the hammer and the anvil. I tried and tried, and I did not have enough strength to do this. And it was even cold where we were. This was done in February, I think. So I had to use a very powerful one-time hydraulic hammer to do it. Slowly pulled it overnight in the fire, which meant digging a trench, putting hot coals at the bottom, laying the chisel on top and covering it with more hot coals, and then topping with cold coals and leaving it overnight. I then had to file the chisel into shape several hours. Also cut to length and tapered the end of the handle as mine was too long from the previous step. I had to harden the chisel, which meant heating the chisel evenly to another very bright orange and submerging it in a bucket of hot oil to cool it, and then more filing. This time it's on 80 grit wet dry paper and a flat surface. Several hours here getting the bottom flat as well as the other sides. That was laborious. Then you tempered the chisel with a blowtorch. That was the picture right over there in the corner. You heat the chisel from the end and watch the colors move towards the other end of the chisel. And when it's that straw yellow color, you have to immediately stop heating, and then you quench the metal with the steel and water to cool it. And then you're back to filing it again and honing the chisel flat on diamond plate, and many more hours on this task. And then you go visit your husband in his workshop, and he calls you this little what Cinderella girl or something like that. So yeah, it was fun. I have a lot of respect for the people who do blacksmithing. It is not my calling, and once it is, I'm very grateful for that opportunity. So Greg and I, he had his talk shop. This is in our previous home in North Carolina. My story on this, because remember it's all about me today a little bit, is the cabinets. I did all the refinishing on the cabinets and we done and back. And that beautiful Sojourn Burton work desk. I'm like, oh, I can set up my own workshop, which I did in my garage, and I got that for $450 at an auction. It was my first auction buy. The best thing was when you opened up all those drawers, I had planes and scrapers and files and really nice tools that was a lovely surprise. So that was, yeah, that's everything that I found in the drawers there. So, let's see. One of our more interesting repairs, that's one here, is we had a J.J. Elliott tall case with nested bells and gongs. It was an insurance story. This is more about my husband, but I play a little part in here. There was a delivery that was scheduled to North Carolina, and it was damaged in shipment. A sofa fell on the hood of the clock, and it damaged the clock, the works, the bells, and the gongs. Greg was asked to provide an estimate for repair, and his initial estimate was significant work, which it really was. And so the buyer took the insurance claim, and in order for him to do that estimate, they asked if they could bring it to our house, so it sat in our foyer for several years. And finally, the insurance company called us and said that we're putting it up for auction, and he sent us a few pictures. So Greg took pictures of the clock and laid out all the pieces and parts on the table and went up for auction, and we purchased it for $600 quite a few years ago. This is before we went to school, wasn't it? Yeah. And then we, mostly Greg, did all the repair works. It took almost 2 years. We ordered bells from the Whitechapel Bell Foundry in London, which that's the foundry that made the Liberty Bell in Big Ben. They were the oldest manufacturing company in England at their closure in 2017. And we actually had the good fortune to tour the Bell Foundry in 2016 when we were over there. It was a really nice way to spend an afternoon. So Greg also repaired the dial and the pendulum, straightened the several arbors, remounted the bells, adjusted and fine-tuned the hammers, and had to make pins for the musical cylinder. I did minor casework repair and sold the clock several years later for $12,000. So it was a lot of work that we put into it. And he said we did not make any money with all the time that we did on it. We also completed a few appraisals, which is the other half of this. This is a snapshot of a collection we appraised with over 100 clocks, and appraisals were a big learning curve and more work than we wanted to do. So don't call us for appraisals. We closed our business in 2022 when we moved out here to Colorado. We had a bit too much on our plates at that time. So I've talked about collecting, learning, and our business. The last area that I've done with my horological experience is volunteering. After Westin, I became a member of the AIC. Anybody heard of the American Institute of Conservation? It's a professional society that supports and empowers professionals, institutions, and the public of preserving our irreplaceable cultural heritage. So a lot of museum folks and people that do conservation are involved in this organization. And I attended 2 of their national conventions and was asked if I would do a webinar for small museums on how to care for your clocks. So I did, and this is the presentation I did. I collaborated with many folks, including Robert Cheney at the Willard House in Clock Museum, Patty Philippin at the American Watch and Clock Museum in Bristol, Connecticut, and the AWCC Museum, our museum, and other conservators, institutions, including the Smithsonian, and the ones that did all this, the Henry Ford Museum, Winterthur, and the Biltmore House. And in doing this, I realized that there's a lot of museum authored care guides for your horological objects. They're out there on several documents, and I put together a little reference place for people to get this. My presentation was recorded, and if you're interested, you can still access it online. If you want, send me a note, and I will send you the link for it. It is called, or Google FAIC Care for Your Clock, if you don't call that. My parents have lived in Hanover, Pennsylvania, which is about 45 minutes from Columbia, where our museum is. And Greg and I both have had the chance to do different volunteering activities over the years for the museum. Greg and our sons, he had two grown sons, so this was when they were quite a bit younger. We digitized all the Seth Thomas catalogs. Last year, I helped Ralph Caputa and others on the Museum Artifacts Committee. Are you guys familiar with Ralph Caputa? He's an NAWCC member. He's oftentimes on the Antiques Roadshow. Yeah, from Houston, exactly. Um, so I helped him do a day of reviewing our inventory for DA sessions, and then spend another day with Janelle, who's one of the archivists at the museum, going through all the paperwork to determine the status of the clocks, and making sure the paperwork was in place to move them on to the next step. I repaired several clock pieces for the museum. The one picture here needed the glass replaced. So my mom came to the museum with us to make sure that we did it right. And that's Michael Schwartz, who works at the museum. And let's see what else. Oh, on the other side, Rory hosts a volunteer week at the museum, usually in May. And I got to help clean some of the Hamilton watch machines. This was last year or 2 years ago now, I can't remember. I got to work actually with some amazing machinists that day also this one's on display at the museum right now, in the Hamilton exhibit. So if any of you guys are into volunteering, reach out to the museum. They do welcome the volunteers an awful lot. I've also done a lot of help with registration at the regionals, and I've also just taken over as the chair for the Time Symposium Committee. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Time Symposiums. I've talked to a few of you today about it. The last one was in Lancaster at the Hamilton Club, and we also did a day at the museum. And here you see Jared Harkness and let me see where to go. I can't believe that. Yeah, I'll tell you in a few minutes when I find it again. And down there is Philip Morris and the S-Town exhibit. Have any of you guys heard the S-Town story, the podcast? John McLemore? Okay, so Brian Reed is a podcaster, and he put together an amazing story about John McLemore, who is he's quite an eccentric person who did amazing restorations and conservations on very complicated clock monuments. His story was told by Brian Reed, and he has a lot of these clocks were provided for a special exhibit at the museum. Philip Morris, who's also on our board, is part of the Museum Artifacts Committee. He put together a book on this. I forgot to bring my book with me. I bought it in January when I came and talked to you guys. But it's an amazing story. If you get a chance to look it up and listen to it, it's about, I don't know, 7 hours of listening on the story, but a really good story. The New York Times promoted it and has also advertised for our museum to have folks coming and look at the exhibit. Really, really well done. Our current Time Symposium is in October up in Sturbridge Village, or actually at the public house just outside Sturbridge Village. Howard Cohen is putting together most of the details for this. It is a 3-day event. Time Symposiums are annual education events that the NAWCC puts on. We do not have a BART at all. It's all educational lectures, and we try and go to other horological objects in the area and events. This year's we have our speakers include Donna Segal, Our James, she's the James Arthur lecturer, and she will talk about her backstory of writing the book Longitude, which I know many of you are familiar with. Another author, Karen Stark, will tell the corporate espionage story of the Swiss and the Waltham Watch Company from his new book, Disrupting Time. Both Greg and I have read both books and highly recommend them. They're very fascinating reads. Bob Frischman is a dinner speaker and will be presenting on the Mulligan, Massachusetts clockmakers. And of course, the only reason you really want to come to attend this event is because my husband here is a guest speaker there. He will not be talking on the same topic that he will talk about tomorrow, so you can come in here and again. He's currently doing research on the calendar clock company of Cartersville, Connecticut, and has asked, it's always looking if anybody has any information on that one, please reach out to him. Yeah. Registration is open. I do have phones with me with a lot of the details of the program, so those are available, and there's also in the back of the room too. These are the rest of the speakers, and we have plans through 2029. Next year's is going to be in Evanston, Illinois at the Palladium Time and Glass Museum. We also will be having a dinner cruise on a Chicago riverboat, architectural tour. And we will also get to go to Mark Frank's house. He's the one that built the astronomical clock. And Rich Newman will also be providing an exhibit with his early watches. So really, really nice. Oh, also, I don't know if you're familiar with the San Filippo estate. We'll be giving a tour of that estate too. So another really nice program. 2026 will be in England, most likely based out of London. It's being done in conjunction with the annual meeting for the Antiquarian Horological Society. It'll be the early part of May. 2027 should be watches based. We're still working on this one, but we're putting up watches in the West, so anywhere from here out to California, and we're still determining two ideas and seeing if something will stick. Military timekeeping at the World War II Museum is another one that we're working on in New Orleans for 2028 and 2029. We hope to be back in the York and Maine Hospital area. So that's the end of my slides. A very dear friend of mine, Renee Carson, has shared with me that when she's asked by fellow NAWCC members what she collects, she always says friends. I like that. So I like to say friends too, is what I mostly collect. So thank you for your time. If you have any questions. One other thing I forgot to mention is I did bring paperwork for taking registrations for nationals, and I have the MART layout for the national next year, which is in June. We're back at the York County Fairgrounds. So that's all back on the back too. Get all the correct. It was hard for me because the open time on it was a little short for a beginner, so I had to remove things often. I didn't get the hang of it. How do I gently do that? Hot water, and sliding things in and working your way in with little, usually a palette scraper of some sort is what I would use in a thin one. And sometimes I have to go to with the water, and yeah, things were really slow. So the creative ways people come for new groups to be back together. I had one object, it was keepsake box, for lack of better words, it had a lot of veneer artwork that they clearly were technical terms for that. But each of the pieces were made there, and it was 100 pieces or so. So a friend had designed a frame that had a board on it. And you use these little fiberglass rods that were bendable, I think, and put a little rubber on the bottom of them, so you could adjust the tension based on how high and how hard you just pinpoint where you wanted the pressure to breathe in these back. I got pictures of that too somewhere. Great, Craig and I primarily did. We kept a blog, a journal that I put out online for family and friends while we were over there that shared our experiences, and we included both the educational and the travel experiences. I was 49, no, 50. I was 50 years old when we went to school, and most of the students in the program were 18 to 22 years old. There was a few of us that were like us at the school, but it was fun. But one of the benefits of being older is we had a few more financial resources and a little more discipline. So we got our schoolwork done during the week, and then we went travel. We could go up to London and we get on the train and catch an early train on Saturday morning. From this real job, we had points, so we had ways to make hotel rooms. The last as long as we could, and then we come back Sunday evening, and we went all over England, and we got to do. The school offered a field trip over to the continent, and so we went up to Amsterdam for a week. We got back inside tours of the Rijksmuseum and their conservation lands. It was absolutely fabulous. We also had behind the scenes tours at the British Museum, the V&A Museum, the Victoria and Albert Museum, several of the pawn shops. His program had personal tours of collections that nobody ever gets to see unless you get a special invite by the owner of the collections. I don't know if you're familiar with Goodwood Estate. It's they hold what was it, the antique car show rally. We could speed there, but the Goodwood Estate also had a clock collection primarily. So the students, one of their learning experiences was to go and survey the clock collection. So they'll have their forms to fill out and do that for a couple of days. I think you guys did. That day, you get to see all sorts of beautiful things. And quite impressive. Do you know anybody that has an interest in this? I know we have good programs here in the States, but it was interesting. I know higher education is expensive, but the British education system, from a tuition base going to that school was about on par for 1 year at one of our public institutions, at a good state institution, was the comparison. So that was interesting. I didn't expect that to be the case, and it was. I don't know what it is now, but I think it's probably not that much different. It's not like going to a private school here. Well, thank you very, very much. Appreciate your time. Thanks for asking me. There we go.